My wife, Emily, is a fairly straight laced individual, and I mean this only in the best possible way. Her social history consists of one boyfriend from high school that ended very badly, and one boyfriend from college who is now a Catholic priest, and me. Now, there's more to these stories, obviously, but facts are facts, right? Now, meager dating history notwithstanding, my wife is a very accomplished physician, and she used to work overnight in the hospital quite a bit. And when you work in the wee hours of the night shift, you often find yourself in the midst of some pretty revealing conversations. So, a few years ago, after a long stint of night shifts, she came home to me and she said, You know that hospital wedding we're going to this weekend? Well, I kind of made a bet with somebody, and I'm going to need your help. So it turns out, in the middle of one of these night shifts, she was sitting around the nurses' station with a handful of nurses and a surgeon named Jay. And the conversation wound its way around to the topic of tattoos. Now, people were throwing in, talking about this tattoo and that tattoo and that tattoo and this artist and this parlor. But my wife, obviously, being my wife, really didn't have a lot to add to this conversation. So after a few minutes, she chimed in with, I could get a tattoo. And now everyone there knew her pretty well. So this statement was met with mostly stunned silence, peppered with a little bit of gut busting laughter. Now, she was kind of offended at the idea that somehow a tattoo was outside her scope of coolness. So she ends up making a bet with Jay the surgeon that she could get a temporary tattoo and apply it in such a way that his wife, Bonnie, a similarly straight laced lawyer, would both notice and remark about it at this wedding we were all going to this coming weekend. Now, my wife's telling me all this, and the wedding's only 2 days away, so I'm now being tasked with the responsibility of obtaining the bogus yet still compelling temporary tattoo. Now, the terms of the bet were pretty simple. 1, Emily gets the tattoo. 2, none of us were to speak of this to anyone. 3, Bonnie had to notice and both remark about the tattoo before the wedding reception was over. And 4, when this was all over, the 4 of us were going out to dinner to a nice restaurant, and the loser of the bet was paying. So the night before the wedding, I head out to the mall to purchase a new sport coat for myself and a bet-winning tattoo. So my first stop is at the Men's Warehouse because I have these gorilla arms, so I can't buy anything off the rack. So I head in there, and sure enough, the tailor says it's going to take him an hour to let out the sleeves on the jacket that I've selected. No matter, though, because an hour is about the right amount of time to go get myself a nice Jamba Juice and do some serious tattoo shopping. Now, I want you to picture in your mind that this is Rochester, New York in the summertime. It's a Friday evening, so it's kind of a casual time. So I am wearing what one could only describe as a fairly standard suburban white guy uniform of pleated khaki shorts, a polo shirt, loafers with no socks, and one of those web belts with like ducks or sailboats embroidered on it. So I leave Men's Warehouse. I continue on to Spencer Gifts, and there among the large collection of lava lamps, sort of black velvety posters, and softcore sex toys, I find a pretty good collection of temporary tattoos. And I'm flipping through them, but none of them are jumping out at me and saying winner. So I move on, figuring I can always loop back to Spencer's if I strike out elsewhere. So I head off and grab myself that Jamba Juice I'd promised myself, and I continue on my quest up and down every spoke of the mall looking for the badass tattoo. And I was not having a lot of luck until I come around the corner, and off in the distance, I see it. Over the food court, through the spray of a rainbow-colored mall fountain, I see the unmistakable backlit sign of a Hot Topic store. And I'm like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. So I quickly head in that direction. Now, truth be told, this may come as a shock to some of you, but I, to that point, had never once darkened the door of a Hot Topic store, not because I was afraid of it or anything, but because I just never had the need until that day. So I walk in, and I immediately look around. I'm like, yes, this is the place, based on the T-shirts and the products and the racks of, well, let's just call them accessories that I'm seeing. I'm like, the killer tattoo is inside these 4 walls somewhere. But after 2 laps around the room, I didn't find anything remotely resembling a temporary tattoo. So I chose to do what no self-respecting man should ever do, which was to get in line to ask help from the clerk behind the counter. So I get in line. There's one guy ahead of me, and I'm just patiently waiting my turn, sucking on my Jamba Juice. And in a sort of an unfortunate confluence of circumstances, the moment I take a very large ingestion of berry frozen goodness, the transaction ahead of me completes, and I sort of take half a step forward, and I am there face to face with a young 20-something clerk who's, let's just put it this way, whose facial adornments would cause some problems at airport security. So I'd sucked in this wad of Jamba Juice, which unfortunately caused the dreaded brain freeze. So there I am, dressed as I am, holding nothing to buy, and temporarily unable to speak. So the clerk sort of looks me up one side and down the other, and looks back up at me with a pretty substantial eye roll and says, can I help you or something? I try desperately to regain my ability to speak and cough and chortle a little bit and said, oh, yeah, sorry, of course. Yeah, do you guys have temporary tattoos? The energy between us rather quickly shifted from indifference to hostility as she reached down and slid up her sleeve, exposing a rather densely illustrated forearm. She looked back up at me and said, yeah, our customers have real tattoos, so no. Now, these are the words I was hearing out of her mouth, but I was also picking up on another vibe that was sort of coming across the counter at me. And it was something she was saying more with her eyes than with her mouth. And it sounded a bit like, why don't you go back to the Apple store, preppy boy? So I realized that my time at the Hot Topic had come to an end. So I thanked her for her time, and got the hell out of there. By this time, my jacket was finished, so I picked it up, and then I continued on to Spencer Gifts, where I picked up a sheet of temporary tattoos in that sort of faded purple color that all tattoos eventually become, no matter what color they start out as. And the next morning, my wife and I picked a mystical, spiritual-looking sun tattoo, and we placed it on her calf just above her ankle. And off to the wedding we went, and the ceremony was lovely, and the bride was beautiful, and the reception was a lot of fun. And we went with a couple who don't drink. So my wife and I did our level best to make sure that the father of the bride got his money's worth out of that open bar we knew he was paying for. But then sometime between dinner and dancing, Jay the surgeon comes over and slaps his hand down on our table and says, I don't know how you did it, but Bonnie saw the tattoo and she could not believe her eyes. You guys win. I guess we're going out to dinner, and I'm buying. Now, thinking back, it was a pretty convincing fake. But my experience with such things is similar to my wife, so, I mean, really, who the hell knows? Unfortunately, before the dinner could be arranged, Jay and Bonnie moved to Virginia. So I'm still waiting for my free dinner. Now, as a married man of nearly 22 years and a father of 4, this story reminds me of the comedian who, when discussing with his girlfriend about the future, said, I can see getting married, and I can see having a couple of kids, but a tattoo, I mean, that's permanent. Thank you.